Thank you.
Yay, Kate.
No, it had to be Michelle. It wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
So
There she is.
there she is. Perfect. So I'm going to share my screen, one of my screens. If I can find the right one. Here it is. You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just the agenda. I figured if I have an agenda, I can possibly remember if we need to. I have an agenda, but it won't advance. There we go. So let's start with a welcome. I'm so glad you have joined us for our first meeting of the year. And I'm really excited about tonight's topic because I always like to revel in all the wonderful things we accomplished in the previous year. I'm going to start with Suzanne. We don't have a record of our most recent quarterly meeting because we didn't have one. So we'll start with that next time. Then we'll get the officers elected. I think I created a poll. And if not, we'll do it on a voice vote. If I can find my poll, that's great. And then we'll just go straight to Michelle, finish with some Q&A, and then we're out of here. I'm going to stop sharing while Suzanne brings us the treasurer's report. So I think
Okay.
I'm through.
Um, well, hang on because I hit share screen, but then do y'all see the?
No, when you hit share screen, don't you have to pick which screen you want to share? That's what I had to do.
Yes, and I don't know why it didn't do that. So hang on. It's stuck. Oh, man. I can't get back to Zoom for some reason. Huh. Something's hung up.
Let me see if I can find my
Okay,
poll.
hang on. Wait a minute. I think I might have hit the wrong thing here. Hang on. Oh, host disabled screen sharing, so I can't share.
Oh, well, see if I can fix that. I just made you the co-host. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Yes, I see what I need to see. Okay. Okay, so briefly, this is my accounting. I keep a separate NPAT itemization on my Quicken at home, my personal Quicken. And so this is a compilation of the income we've had and the expenses we've had. And our only regular chapter expense right now is we do pay MailChimp to maintain our monthly our mailing list. And so and then we do annually need to renew our Zoom account. And some other things we've done are Friends of Tandy Hills. When we had our guided tour there, we profit shared with the friends. So we paid half of our donations to the Friends of Tandy Hills. And then when we do Prairie Seekers, we do, buy lunch, and that is paid for by a grant. And so that gets reimbursed to the person who paid. Um, and so in income, we got a really nice donation this year from the local Native Plant Society chapter, the North Central chapter. They gave us $1,000 to support Prairie Seekers. So we really, really appreciate that. We don't actually charge fees for too many of our classes and workshops, but one that we do charge for is Prairie Seekers. And so this is what we made for Prairie Seekers last year. And then a lot of people give us donations, which we super appreciate when we do hikes and classes and workshops. So that's what all of our other income is. So what this final entry is here from miscellaneous is there in the bylaws of the State Native Prairies Association, the chapters are committed to keeping a maximum of $5,000 in our treasury. And once we reach $5,000, anything over that goes to the state for whatever project we want to specify or just general. So we sent almost $3,000 back to the state this past year, to support the Madden Prairie, which is our largest 100% fee simple owned holding, but it's kind of an orphan area because it's in West Texas, out in Colorado City near Midland, and there's not a chapter out there. And so we are the closest chapter to Madden. So the board felt like that was a really nice use of our excess funds, was to help fund the maintenance at Madden. So that's my 2023 treasurer report. And we've already accrued enough in our treasury that we're about to need to make another donation back to the state. So thank you very much for your support of our chapter and for the State Native Prairies Association. We really, really appreciate it, because we're really making an impact, and good things are happening in North Texas.
Thank you, Suzanne. We had a question while you were talking. We have a new person who's unfamiliar with Prairie Seekers. Will you tell her what Prairie Seekers is?
Well, Prairie Seekers started out as a training class, and it still is a training class for interested people to learn how to recognize a really high quality prairie, so that perhaps eventually Native Prairies Association could approach the owners of that land and discuss prairie maintenance, even a conservation easement, or an outright purchase of the land to conserve that prairie. What we found in the early stages of doing the trainings is that a lot of people need and want more training on what they're actually looking at, as far as what are the plant species, what are the ecological communities. And so that's what we're currently doing, is we're trying to visit a wide variety of different prairies and grasslands, savannas in the North Texas region, so we can look at different kinds of prairies that arise on different soil types. What are some of the indicator species that will tell you if you're looking at a really high quality prairie? So that's what we're doing now. And so I think for the next Prairie Seekers in the spring, we're going to be looking at more urban prairies that are very disturbed, and looking for little glimmers of hope in those prairies, and recognizing and acknowledging that even if they're not pristine prairies, they're actually providing really good wildlife habitat despite that. And so so that's basically Prairie Seekers in a capsule.
So let me add only that in April, our featured speaker is me, and I'm going to tell you about Prairie Seekers. So we're going to take an in-depth look about how we evolved and what our plans are and what kind of fun things we're doing now. So that'll be on April 1st. Our regular meeting, which should be April 8th, has been eclipsed. The next thing on my agenda is let me actually share my desk again so I can show you the officers list. Where did it go? Let's go back into full screen. You guys see this?
Yes.
All right. So this is our officers as we proposed them for 2024. And the president, myself, and Secretary Michelle and Treasurer Suzanne have been in these roles now for several years. And this year, we're so pleased to welcome Dave Vestal as our Vice President. If you will be so kind as to elect us all again. And what I'd like to ask you to do, if you are an NPAT member, I can't find my poll back. I lost it, even though I created it, but I can't find it. So if you're an NPAT member, would you be so kind as to unmute yourself? And I'm going to ask for the yays and the nays once I give you a chance to unmute. So everybody please unmute. And so my question for you is,
Oh, the poll popped up.
Oh, it did.
It
Where?
did.
I can't see
I see it.
If you can see the poll, who else can see the poll?
I see it.
Yes.
All right.
I see it.
Use the poll.
Yes.
Click your answer on the poll. I love it. I cannot see it.
How funny.
It's a brand new Zoom. So I'm going to stop sharing. And if I can find it back myself, I will tell you how it turned out. And if I can't find it myself, I will still tell you how it turned out.
It looks like it's unanimous. You want me to
Perfect.
end it?
Yeah, you can go ahead and end it. Oh, that's probably why I lost it. When I made you co-host, I probably did something.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Michelle is going to tell us about what we did in 2023. And there are a few new people. And so let me say just a little bit about Michelle. If you don't know Michelle Villafranca, she's an employee of the city of Fort Worth, and she has a number of hats, both with the city and in real life. But I think among the things I find most wonderful about Michelle is she's the spark that started our chapter of Prairie Seekers. So Michelle, Suzanne, Joanne was there at the beginning. These are the people who said, prairies need our help. We need to be helping them. So she gets check marks on my book for that. Michelle is, I think of myself as a prairie evangelist. And if I am, it's because Michelle taught me how to do it and I'm not as good. She just recruits people. She talks to you for 5 minutes and the next thing you know, you've got some clippers in one hand and you're out there whacking privet. It's just utterly amazing. What she's done more recently is a little bit of a painful job with the city of Fort Worth, reviewing all of the developments that come by, the proposals for new developments that are basically ruining our prairies or just gobbling them up. So she's done a lot. She's still doing it. Not all of her job is fun, but the part that we love best is the time she gives us. So Michelle, will you tell us please what we did last year? You're on mute, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Let me share the screen. Thanks for the introduction also. Let's see. Hopefully I can share it. Let's see, there it is. Okay, can everyone see? Or at least one person see?
I see it.
And then I just wanted to let y'all know that okay, great. My internet and electricity is probably unstable, so I may go in and out, and I may disappear because the wind is so bad, and usually when it's super windy, our electricity goes out due to overhead power lines. So as far as the year in review, I do this every year. We do a report each year on all of our activities and volunteer time and all of our programming. And so when I'm doing the report, I just go ahead and create a presentation, which is the form of the report as well. Let's see. And now okay. So basically, it's broken up into different types of activities that we do. So starting out, I cover our presentations. And since the pandemic and post-pandemic, when we adopted using Zoom, a lot of our in-person meetings had gone from being in person at TCC, one of their campuses, or the YMCA and different places, to Zoom presentations. And so the first one that we do every year is this one, the year in review. And so the last couple of years, it has been a Zoom presentation. I think that my screen is probably delayed, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about the next slide if it hasn't shown up. In April, we had an in-person presentation, and it was the Marine Creek Land Scholars. And Kate was able to coordinate, pull together an in-person meeting really quickly. It was at TCC's Northwest campus, where the Marine Creek Land Scholars are based out of. And what they are high school students that are going through kind of advanced college prep training, and they have a lot of hands-on science training. And it's run by a teacher that's with that school, which is the Fort Worth ISD school, but in coordination with Tarrant County College, the Northwest campus. And so the students, it's a tiered approach. So the freshmen coming in, they come in like foot soldiers basically. And the students in sophomore, junior, and senior are mentoring each other. So the seniors, when they were freshmen, they would have been in the program. And by the time they're seniors, they're actually coordinating and leading projects and doing outreach and presentations. And that's what this presentation was about. It was basically, they started this because Fort Worth chapter of NPAT helped them do a prairie project on campus, and then now that's kind of become their outdoor laboratory. And some of our members and NPSAT members have worked with the greenhouse there at TCC to grow plants out. So these students, these high school students, were working at the greenhouse at TCC, taking native seed, growing that out, and doing some basic scientific research, and they presented on it. I think this was July, I can't be behind the screen. In July, we had a Zoom presentation from Hugh Aljo, the Noble Research Institute, and that was on regenerative ranching, which I missed that one. I was out of town, but I'm sure it was very, very good because, as everyone knows, ranchers are pretty much that last hope for prairies. So someone who is maintaining that open space and conducting sustainable grazing. They usually, if they know their grasses, they're going to be good stewards and prairie stewards. And so that's what regenerative ranching is basically sustainable ranching. And then in September, we had a presentation. So you'll notice we're jumping around. We're not having a meeting an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting every month, because we focus our attention on getting out into the field with hikes and field trips. Over the summer last year, the city of Fort Worth, with open space in the Parks Department, we wrote this huge $150,000 grant to do some restoration work at Tandy Hills, which is a park in Fort Worth that's known for its wildflowers. And what the grant entailed was mulching of up to 50 acres, following that up, spraying herbicide on privet resprouts, interns. So we hired 3 interns, and they were out there doing outreach, doing trail work, doing veg studies. And then the rest of the grant is for interpretive signs and trail construction. It was all supposed to be done within like 8 months, but that's nearly impossible to do, especially doing it through the city. There's a lot of, there's a lot of red tape, and then we've run into some obstacles. So the grant is carrying over again this year, which is actually really good because the trail should be installed, 2 miles worth of trails this summer. And we're able to hire 3 to 4 more interns for this spring and summer, which I'm working on right now. And so our last year's interns, which was Jacob Estes, Paige Pretty, and Kimberly Villarreal, were like, they were so good. They endured some of the worst summer weather, and they did not complain. They basically were foot soldiers. They were out there with heavy backpacks, trimming trails, talking to people, again, doing veg surveys. So in September, they gave us, actually their internship was over, but they recorded their presentations that they did, and they presented to City of Fort Worth staff, and then we provided that presentation over Zoom. So I anticipate we will do that again for the end of this year's interns. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, and then in November, Brandy Kelp, who is one of my collaborators in the city, we work very closely on open space and on that grant. She gave a presentation on the city's open space program. And so thus far, the open space program, we started in 2019, and with just a few people, interdepartmental collaboration and working with stakeholders, we've purchased about 350 acres across, I think it's about 6 sites. And we're still purchasing land. It takes a while. It's not as easy as you would think to purchase land. So she was giving us an update on that. And that picture was from Broadcast Hill. And then so now I'm going into I'll go into our special events. This is actually normally in December, we have an in-person meeting or a potluck. And this year, Kate organized the holiday wine tasting and prairie hike out at Marker Cellar, which is in Wise County. And so that Marker Cellar, they used to be open to the public, and then they built a facility in Bridgeport where you can go for wine tasting, and they no longer have public access to where they have their vineyard and their processing. But Kate was able to get us a special event there hosted by the owners of Marker Cellar, and they're right next to the grasslands, but in fact, they actually have a nice prairie on their property. So we hiked through their prairie to not a museum, a cemetery that was just hidden in the woods on LBJ National Grasslands. And this picture is from a gravestone from dating back to 1895. I think there was another one that was dated back to the 1870s. And so we hiked to that cemetery. On the way there and on the way back, we found all kinds of interesting nature things, like a deer kill site, which many of us were very interested in that. And then when we got back, the owners of Marker Cellar treated us to wine tasting and explanation of the wines. And it was really a lot of fun. And here's just another picture of our wine tasting. These are some of their wines. It should come up, and the picture should come up in a minute. And these are the owners, Becky and Mark, talking to us about the wines. And then, so now we're going into some hikes that we had last year. And, as I mentioned, whenever I'm working on this report, I'm like, you don't realize how much we've all done until you start working on a report. And once you do that, it's like, wow, we have done a lot. So, let's see, I think I can't see the date because there it is. This was in March that Suzanne led a hike at Rocky Creek Prairie at Benbrook Lake. It looks like my internet's acting up again, so hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
was not able to attend this, but okay, good, thank you. Yeah, my screen just pops up and says internet's unstable, so I was not at this hike, but looks like Suzanne had a lot of participants. And usually these hikes, with each hike and field trip that we have, it brings different people in. So that's always exciting to meet new people and also proselytize about prairies people. In April, Jeff and Jean Erickson coordinated the Fossil Hill hike on Lake Amon Carter. So that's an example of some nice prairie in fringe western cross timbers near Bowie. And so that is always it's a small hike, so it's usually limited to 10 people. So if we do that again this coming year, I encourage anyone who has not been to attend that hike. It's a real pleasure to be able to see that 100-acre site. In April, kind of in preparation for the grant, within the grant for City of Fort Worth, we wrote that Fort Worth chapter of Native Prairies Association would do a couple of outreach events just as part of the grant. And so we led a hike in April, Kate, Morgan, and I, and Dawn Young, and Deborah Young, out at Tandy Hills, and then we popped over to Broadcast Hill. So this was a well-attended hike. Everyone wants to see Tandy Hills in April with the wildflowers. Sometimes they're offset, and this year it was good, but I think it was a little bit later, like after this field trip, that the flowers got even better. So we hiked around, we looked at some of the mulching areas, and then we went over to Broadcast Hill and looked at that new open space site, which was our first open space site. And then Joanne did a little mini bastard cabbage or savage cabbage bash, where we pulled bastard cabbage from Broadcast Hill. And then in, I think this was April also, Joanne, and again, I didn't realize Joanne had done so many outreach events. I know she and Eveline do a lot, but this church hike at Corps of Engineers Richardson Track on Lake Benbrook Lake, I didn't realize she had even done that. So that's exciting. She took people from, I guess, her church and showed them the prairie.
This
And
was
then also in April, again,
Michelle,
like I said,
it
I'm
was
sorry.
It was a church
Mhm.
that requested, I somehow came across a person on Facebook somehow, and she requested some information for her kids. Her husband actually works for Corps of Engineers, I don't know, he's a nature guy too. So it was real interesting to take them and Josh Queering.
Okay.
It was really fun to take the kids.
Okay. Yeah, and so Josh Queering is a biologist with the Army Corps of Engineers, and he's participated in several of BioBlitz. And I think he may be coordinating one for this year that we'll do in collaboration with him. And he really knows his plans. And Jeff in April took people out to Chalk Mountain. That's a Texas Land Conservancy property that is not open to the public. It's I think it's by special, accommodations or special tours. So Jeff coordinates that every year. And so he took a small number of people, because there's a limit, I think, on how many people you can go to areas where you can't just hike in, you might need to drive a vehicle. And then Jeff led a hike in May at LBJ National Grasslands. And so he usually shows hike participants. They look at Fort Worth Prairie area and Western Cross Timbers. So both of those ecosystems can be seen at LBJ National Grasslands. And then in June, Kate organized a hike with Leela, with Jamie Baxter Sly and Richard Fry Hike, I believe, were the Leela hosts. And they went and they hiked Barn Owl Ridge. And so we're just at June. we're just at June. Then usually in the summer, July, August, we kind of don't have so many hikes just because that's getting really unpleasant out. But we still sprinkle things in. So Suzanne had a hike that she coordinated with Amy Martin for the DFW Wild hike, and I think it was going to be earlier in the year, but it got postponed until October, which is a good thing because it's a little bit nicer in October. And it looks like I missed this one too, but it looks a little bit cold and maybe a little bit drizzly and rainy when they went out. But look, smiles, smiles, everyone. Everyone was having a good time and learning plants and exploring different things. And this was at the Corps of Engineers Richardson Tract. And then in October also, Kate organized the Sherry Cape Heart Nature Preserve tour with Jim Freisinger. And if anyone's not familiar with that area, that's in Arlington. It used to be called Southwest Nature Preserve, but it's a really, really, really good example of Eastern Cross Timbers woodlands, which you don't see a lot of anymore in DFW because most of it's been developed. And then in the foreground, the yuccas in this picture are actually Glen Rose yucca, which is an endemic yucca species. In April, this wasn't a chapter event, but I threw it in here because it was a really awesome event, and it was the Bartouche Ranch Tour, and Jeff Sargent of NPAT coordinated that with the ranch owners. And Katie Bartouche is one of the chapter leaders or board members for the Blackland Prairie of NPAT chapter, and it's her family's property. And I forget how many acres they have. I think it was, I'm gonna mess it up. I think it's 5,000 acres, maybe. My apologies. This is a very vast ranch, and they conduct prescribed burns on their property. They've purchased some adjacent landowners' property. So we looked at at different areas of their ranch, you know, for vistas or brush control and prescribed fires. And then we ended the trip with cooking out hot dogs. It was really a lot of fun. In this picture here, where everyone's standing around, we were up on a mesa, and you could just see forever. You could see into Oklahoma. It was incredible. And then in May, Diane Witherby held a field trip to the Flower Mound. So she is a board member of the Friends of Flower Mound, the Friends of the Mound, I think is the name of the organization in Flower Mound. And Flower Mound is all that area used to be ranch land, and it's actually a hill that sits higher than the rest of the town. But over time, the town built up around it, but this property has still been maintained as a prairie. And so Diane leads some really great tours of the mound, and it's really impressive to see a prairie right in the middle of a town. And she is planning to hold another hike. So that will probably be April, May-ish. We haven't set the date. But we have, again, a lot of things in the calendar coming up. So as far as workshops and Prairie Seekers, we hold that either 1 or 2 times a year, and Suzanne coordinates it with the help of her team of prairieologists, which include Mary Curry, Jean Erickson, Kate Morgan, and myself. And so what Suzanne does is she picks the location, she meets with the landowner, coordinates what the tour is going to look like. And then, as she mentioned, we have a grant that pays for the meals. And this is one of our activities or workshops we charge a fee for. That fee really just goes back into the program or for the overage to be donated to the state NPAT later on for prairie conservation. And so this one in March, we went to the Skip Barnett Ranch. There's evidence there of at least one leg of the Chisholm Trail going through his property. His property is Fort Worth Prairie habitat, and it's at the boundary of Wise and Denton County, which is suffering from a lot, like massive ex-urban development. And so the view that you see of Skip in the bottom picture, that's what the landscape looks like, but now houses are being developed around. So that ranch is 1,000 acres. And it is also, I believe, it's under a conservation easement with the Texas Land Conservancy. And then our next Prairie Seekers was in November, and we had it at the Thompson Ranch, which is in Wise County near the LBJ National Grasslands. As I mentioned on the Barnett Ranch tour, we were looking at cattle grazing and expansive Fort Worth Prairie habitat and drought. And then at the Thompson Ranch, we were looking more at, well, I think they do have some cattle. They do some burning, and it's under a foundation. So, and Suzanne can tell us more about that if anyone has any questions. But that foundation, I'm sorry.
No, it's a Western Cross Timbers primarily. Up on the mesa, you can see in the picture that's Fort Worth Prairie, but it's very overgrown with brush. It's basically almost a total grassland reconstruction, as opposed to, like, say, the Barnett Ranch, which is a remnant. So it's really interesting how much it's evolved. I've been going out there since the 1990s to Thompson, and it's really evolved beautifully.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I knew I was leaving something out with they were doing a lot of regeneration, I guess, and prairie reconstruction. They're also a Lone Star Land Steward Award recipient. I think I have some more pictures. Hold on. My thing's not, oh, there. Some more pictures from our hike there. So we went up on top of a mesa that had completely different habitat. So it's still Fort Worth Prairie. It was kind of like a confused cross timbers mixed with Fort Worth Prairie caprock habitat. So you had prairie barrens up there. And at the bottom of the hill, you had this massive, glorious post oak. Let me go back one more. Yeah, so the thing that I was really impressed with is when we went up on top of the mesa, there was a sandstone, and it had carving in it. It had someone's last name. And then down at the bottom of the cliff, there was an old homestead site that just had the foundation remaining. And so my mind was just going like an overdrive, imagining like who the people were that lived there in the 1800s, also what Native Americans were there into the 1800s, and just the history. It was really making history come alive in my mind, going up that to look on that mesa. And then these are just some more pictures from our Prairie Seekers. We had a really good turnout. We had a lot of conversation about prairie ecology and identifying plants. And then we had lunch, and the Thompson Foundation managers, Lisa Bellows and her son, actually cooked beef. So they made hamburgers, but it was from like farm to table or ranch to table. It was cattle that they had raised on that property and then had butchered organically and basically fed us. And there were a few vegetarians, so they had something for the vegetarians also. In August, we had, it was not really a BioBlitz something like BioBlitz, but it was called Explore the Dark Mothing at Broadcast Hill. So this was another event that we held in conjunction with the grant. And we had a really good turnout. And again, it was completely different people, a lot of people I've never met before that came to the Broadcast Hill event versus people who maybe go to Prairie Seekers. And we basically watched the sunset over downtown Fort Worth. Sam Kieschnick with Texas Parks and Wildlife was out there, and he had his interns set up mothing stations. And then our interns, the park and open space interns, helped with the mothing and did a little bit of outreach. And so some of us were out there until almost midnight. I'm sure we could have stayed longer, but you have to work the next day. So so these are just some pictures of Sam. So talk about someone who can get people really excited. Sam got people really excited. So we had 56 species. So we have a iNaturalist project for open space and for parks. And so for this open space site, on that night, we had 86 observations of 56 species. So that's pretty good because you're talking about moths. You're talking about insects after dark. And then in September, Jeff Quell coordinated and led the Camp Leroy Schumann BioBlitz. That's the city of Fort Worth property that is not parkland, it's property management land. So it's not a park, it's not anything, but it's a really special place. It's a really, really, really neat piece of property that we in the Parks Department hope to eventually manage by Natural Resource Management. It's Western Cross Timbers. It has a lot of interesting plants there. It used to be a Boy Scout camp. And then not too long ago, there was a building, kind of like a log cabin type building there, and it burnt down. So I'm sure it was arson. So that was demolished. So there's really not really any structures remaining at Camp Leroy, but there are some nice trails in there. And from that BioBlitz, they had 529 observations of 235 species. So that's quite impressive. And I think Jeff is going to be organizing some more BioBlitzes here in 2024, April, May, and probably June. He also did a BioBlitz at Rock Creek Ranch Park, which is a new park with City of Fort Worth, and it's not open to the public. It's only open by, scheduled activities that we approve of. And so I had asked him if he could do a BioBlitz at Rock Creek Ranch Park. And so he did that. I think Kate helped him, and Josh Quering, I think, attended that with Corps of Engineers. And so they made 488 observations of 191 species. And so that's really good. We're very interested, the Parks Department, very interested in getting as much documentation. iNaturalist, we've been doing deer surveys out there. We hope to do some prescribed fire out there because it's a really special place and we want to improve the habitat and protect and preserve it. Joanne, as far as outreach goes, Joanne did a lot of outreach through Facebook. And so I pulled this from I think one of her Facebook posts, and it just said, every year the children of America sing the same refrain. Have you ever imagined our local animals doing the same? What do you have for urban or rural animals to eat? I'm talking about native plants that have supplied our fauna with nutrition for thousands of years. When you give them plants that are native to foreign places, we're virtually starving them. And then Diane Weatherby wrote an article for the Cross Timbers Gazette called Prairie is Our Most Endangered Resource. And that had pretty good distribution through social media and through the media page. And I just pulled her first paragraph. I think it was her first paragraph. We protect natural features like the cross timbers forest, but no one seems to mourn the loss of the open grasslands. Yet there are many reasons to protect and restore prairies. Prairies are highly diverse, and just 1 acre of native prairie can hold over 300 species. And then I wanted to do a shout out for Jeff Quayle. There was an article, let's see, it was in a Green Source DFW article that says amateur botanist earns accolades while chasing plants in North Texas. And so his lifelong search to ID all the plants around him led him to document nearly more than 2,000 species for Brett and discover a new plant that was subsequently named after him. Oops, hold on. Yep. And then I was interviewed by the Fort Worth Report, and that was another article about Fort Worth's disappearing prairie, and we need to conserve what is left. So in the article, it just said their sense of urgency was driven by the amount of native prairie turned into developments each year, as Kate had mentioned. Data compiled by the city of Fort Worth in 2019 found that developers turned 2,800 acres of prairie into new subdivisions and businesses each year. If people understood the diverse ecology, I can't see, of native prairies, they would realize how impressive it is and why it's worth protecting. And then another outreach activity was the Savage Cabbage Bash, which Joanne leads every year. And these are some of the students that participated in the Cabbage Bash. Let me move this. These were Marine Creek, at the Marine Creek Cabbage Bash at Northwest, TCC's Northwest campus. So these are some of the students that helped pull the bastards. In March, she took the Young Women's Leadership Academy on a cabbage bash, and I think that was on TRWD's Trinity Trails. And then in April, Joanne also did a cabbage bash. And so this was at Corps of Engineers, Benbrook Lake property, and that's Zach Chapman reveling and pulling the savage cabbage. And so she has her eyes focused on bastard cabbage when she's driving. And so she finds these places and then she coordinates pulls. And so in April, when we did the Tandy Hills hike, she came out, and when we went to Broadcast Hill, she organized us to pull bastard cabbage, which is a good thing because we don't have people out there, like we don't really have a volunteer base out at Broadcast Hill doing that right now. And Dave Vestal is in that picture. He pulled the most. I think he won a pat on the back or something for pulling the most. Joanne and Eveline. Yeah, I hear your speaker's working, your microphone. Joanne and Eveline did Prairie Day at White Rock Lake. That was an public outreach event. That was a Blackland chapter of NPAT. It was like a co-event between Blackland and the Fort Worth chapters at White Rock Lake. And then in May, we were invited to go to Louisville ISD's architecture class because they had taken Tandy Hills and LBJ grasslands and used as a theme for their ecoscapes project. So I think it was like a senior project. And that project that they worked on was basically for giving them a little bit of professional training for architecture, but implementing landscapes or implementing the ecology, these disappearing prairie ecologies into their project. In September, we had a landowner workshop at Leo Ranch. That was a state NPAT workshop that Joanne and Eveline went to and visited with people and saw the presentations and hikes. And then they also went to the Fort Worth Botanic Garden Brit Career Day. So I'm trying to remember if Eveline's a retired school teacher. I think she was a school teacher. I know Joanne was.
Well,
So
Eveline was a mother. She had tons of kids.
okay.
She is a founding member of the Native Plant Society.
Okay. Yes,
That's-
and also Native Prairies are
Yes.
Fort
Yep.
Worth chapter.
She
but-
also was a native member of the Native Prairies, a founding.
Yeah. Yes, and so they go to a lot of school events, career days, helping to engage the younger generations. As far as the newsletter goes, we've kept up with the newsletter. As Kate and I do the newsletter, Kate's doing more of it than I am lately. I think I'm slacking off. And then Joanne, Suzanne, Kate, and I do the Facebook as well and the website. And then for North Texas Giving Day, we used to coordinate it every year, but now Jeff Sargent with the state coordinates it for the two local chapters. And so we were able to raise over $10,000 in the September North Texas Giving Day. And so as an example of what happens to that money, you know, when you do North Texas Giving Day, this money comes back to the chapters and to the state. But in general, the organization that does North Texas Giving Day, the Communities Foundation, they do land conservation grants, and that's where the city of Fort Worth received the $150,000 grant to do the Tandy Hills restoration and intern program. So I do give every Giving Day because you see that money come back locally. Amazon Smile, I looked it up, it's still functioning. And then as far as volunteers, so all of these hikes, none of us are getting paid. We're not employees of Native Prairies Association. We're not doing it on the job or anything. This is all volunteer. And so board members and other volunteers we've given 724.5 hours in 2023, and at the national volunteer hourly rate, that comes up to over $23,000 of, you know, basically donation of our time for this organization. And I think we get a lot done. I'm really proud of us. We're small but mighty. And then in September, Joanne, Jeff, Suzanne, and Eveline, maybe missing someone, went to the state chapter conclave at Buchner Lake State Park, or Buchner State Park. And that's kind of over by Bastrop. And that's the time where the different chapter leaders go and meet with NPAT board members and employees and kind of plan out and discuss chapter activities. And these are some pictures from Joanne, the cabins there, the CCC cabins, and I think the meeting facility. And then they went over to Bastrop State Park to look at the wildfowl. I can't talk. The wildfire that went through there, and I forget what year that was, 2011, I think, and the regrowth of the pines. And then, so for various months, though, again, I just wanted to point out that Joanne and Eveline do a lot of things. They go to board meetings, they go to events, they really are everywhere all the time, getting the word out and coordinating with the state and with other groups. We had our annual member gathering in October. So we went to that, and then I just wanted to point out who these tireless volunteers are. So we have Diane Weatherby, Jean Erickson, Mary Curry, Joanne and Eveline, Suzanne, Jeff, Now we have Dave Vestal. There's Diane at the Flower Mound. Kate Morgan, myself. And then I just wanted to point out that Mary Curry, who is one of our leaders for Prairie Seekers, she's also a renowned author. So I bet some people didn't know this book called North Central Texas Wildflowers. Mary compiled this book, wrote it, authored it, and she based it, I think, a lot out of from the LBJ National Grasslands and some of her prairie seeking drives across North Texas. So it's a really good book. She I think she got a second edition reprint out of it, and Suzanne maybe can tell us where we can get it.
Well,
I think you might be able to get.
The second edition has a lot of additions to it and updates on taxonomy and things like that. And it's a little confusing, but you can buy it directly from Mary, and she will sell it at cost, which is about $35, I think. And if you want to donate more to support NPAT, she will pass that through to NPAT. If you buy it from Amazon, which is currently selling it, I haven't looked today, but it was currently, last time I looked, selling it at a discounted price, but none of that actually goes to NPAT. So it's a wonderful book. Mary spends untold hours in the field gathering data and taking photographs. She has an amazing photographic setup, and so it's well worth it. Really, really well worth it to support her and her endeavors and our wildflowers. So
Yes, thank you. I didn't have a link, so I'm glad I didn't look up something from Amazon and put it on there. So we could probably put that in the newsletter.
Yes, and I will put her email address in the chat if you want to contact her directly and buy directly from her, or you can get it on Amazon. Again, last time I looked, they were selling it. Originally, they sold it for like $50 some, and then they brought the price down to basically cost. So you can get it from Amazon. So I will put that in the chat.
And it did go out in a email blast, actually, just on this topic right around Christmas time to try and generate some gift giving. And we'll include it again in the next newsletter as well.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
So Michelle, that was absolutely inspiring. Thank you.
I think I have one more slide. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Right.
I'm almost done. No, I think I had another slide or two. Oh yeah, Amy's book. But by now everyone knows probably Amy's DFW, Wild DFW book. But she's been a good partner for our chapter and for the Blackland chapter. And we've done programs with her, the hikes. So if anyone does not have this book, she does a lot of public outreach events where she sells the book, or you can go to her website and get it. And it's a really good book. I gave some as gifts. And then, so this is my last slide, I think. I just wanted to point out that we have some things already on the calendar, and even today we were working on some other hikes and prairie seekers coming up. So we have a lot planned for 2024. Kate, do you want to?
Yeah, let me chime in. The
Okay.
Bio Blitz on the Richardson track with the Army Corps of Engineers. That's March 23rd, and Josh Queering is the organizer of that, but our NPAT chapter is partnering with him. So we'll keep you guys updated on time and meeting location. There's also a Bio Blitz not on this list in April 27th. That's at the Walsh Ranch, which is this big mega development in Parker County. Suzanne and I literally discovered a pocket prairie, a neglected remnant. And we're going to do our best to inventory the plants there, and I think maybe even in some of the surrounding areas. And that's April 27th. So March 23rd for the Bio Blitz on the Richardson track, and April 27th. And I think by the time of the February newsletter, most of these TBDs will have been nailed down. Suzanne, am I leaving anything out? The
I do have
BioBlitz,
something to add when I get when you get
Okay.
a chance.
no problem. The BioBlitz at the Walsh Ranch is part of the City Nature Challenge. So if you're volunteering in the
Yes.
City Nature Challenge and you want to go to a new area that has never been blitzed by anybody, come along. So Joanne, please go ahead.
Whenever be watching for the Savage Cabbage Bash, because we can use all the help we can get. I had some friends that I picked up on Facebook that came out and helped us, because it's hit or miss with the kids that show up. I never know how many I'm going to have. And I always try to get them to bring their parents with them, because that ends up doubling our workforce. So if you are interested, you can either shoot me an email or just watch for it coming up. We'll announce when we're going to do it, and you can come out and join us. Thank you.
Do we have a target date for when we're going to do it?
We typically I'll meet with TRWD and come up with like 3 or 4 dates. We haven't had that meeting yet. It usually happens in January. We typically will do it late February, early March, if we can. Kind of depends on the weather.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne.
It's already up, and we may be doing it really early, because last year it didn't show up. It's already showing up now. So I'm assuming we might do it earlier this year.
Yeah, I can't decide when I'm walking in my fields if this is last year's leftovers or this year's new stuff coming up.
Right.
Any questions for Michelle on that presentation? Anybody have any comments or questions? Okay. If there's no other business and no questions or comments, I think we're going to end on time.
I'm
So let me
impressed.
thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
And talk to you soon.
Thank you.
It was
Bye,
great.
guys.
Thanks.